This week in CIST 2611, I'll look at Chapter 9, Defending Against the Virus Attacks. In this chapter, we're going to look at how virus attacks work and how viruses are spread. We'll look at the difference between different types of virus attacks. Look at virus scanners, using those to detect viruses and some different types of antivirus software. And then we'll look at the appropriate strategy to defend against virus attacks. All right, so what this chapter does, it provides a more detailed examination of the viruses and virus protections that we talked about in Chapter 2. In this, we're going to learn about specific antivirus programs and how we can configure them, and also different antivirus policies that organizations should adopt and techniques for protecting other types of hardware, such as our routers, from viruses attacks. So first we can start by discussing what a virus is and the difference between a virus and a worm. So some people are going to lump worms in as a type of virus, but we'll look at the difference of this. A virus is a program that self-replicates. Okay, now it does require human action to trigger, and it usually has some other negative function. A worm is a special type of virus, and this gets spread without human intervention. So viruses spread a couple different ways. For example, viruses can read your email address book and email itself to everyone in it. Like I said, it can usually attach itself to the victim's existing email software. Some of them may have their own email engines as well. They may be embedded in code of HTML formatted messages. Now, before the networks were so prevalent, viruses were commonly going to be spread through infected disks. Now, since disks are rarely used today, they can still be transferred with magnetic tapes, optical discs, other types of recordable media, flash drives, as a way a virus can spread as well. Worms, on the other hand, they scan your computer for connections to a network, and from there it makes a copy of itself into other machines that's on that network that you do have right access to. Virus scanners are software that tries to prevent viruses from infecting a machine. You'll mainly hear this called antivirus programs. So these work in two ways. They contain a list of known virus files in a .dat file. It compares the files on your computer to that file, and it can also monitor the computer for certain types of virus behaviors. The antivirus programs, the virus scanners, can either be on demand, where you tell it to scan, or it can be an ongoing scanning program as well. And there are some different types of virus scanning techniques. You can scan email attachment scanning, so the virus program will scan incoming emails in the attachments. Download scanning is where it will scan files that are being downloaded. File scanning, it will scan the files. Heuristic scanning. In this one, it's going to look for rules to determine whether a file program is behaving like a virus. And this is one of the ways the best ways to find a virus that's not a known virus. This is something that's not completely accurate yet. Research is still being conducted to improve it. Active code scanning, instant messaging scanning is where it'll scan your instant messaging for known viruses. Now, there are some different commercial antivirus software we'll be looking at. Some of these will be free and some will be premium, but there are some factors you need to consider when choosing an antivirus software. First is the budget, the price. Now, this should not be your only consideration, but it's something you should consider. A vulnerability is how often an email is used or files downloaded. So how often are you vulnerable to a virus. So, if you have an organization that has diverse users that frequently get emails from outside of the organization, or they download from the internet, they're going to need more antivirus protection than somebody that only uses the internet, an organization only uses the internet periodically. Some other factors to consider is also the skill of the users that need to understand how to use it. And also the specifications of the software and how it functions. What methods does it use to scan? How often are the DAT files updated? How quickly does the vendor respond to new virus threats and release any updated definitions for the virus? So commercial antivirus software, two of the biggest ones are McAfee and Symantec, or Norton's. They are competing antivirus companies. Both have their good and bad. Both of them have a price on this. They're affordable products. Avast is a free to home and non-commercial users. It does have a GUI interface. Does not necessarily have all the features of a commercial product like McAfee or Symantec. AVG is another have a free version they also have a commercial version. It integrates with email clients such as Outlook, filters web traffic and downloads as well. This one, Kaspersky, does have business and personal versions, has other features. There is some controversy with this, which this is has Russian origin, may have ties to Russian intelligence. I would really recommend that you do your research on these. This is something we will discuss more in Chapter 11 when we talk about security policies with the antivirus policies and procedures. Organizations may have some of these policies set up to where we always use a virus scanner. If you're not sure about an attachment, do not open it. Consider exchanging code word with friends. Do not believe security alerts you are sent. Be skeptical of any email you're sent. And do not download files from the internet. So these are all good policies and procedures that you need to be aware of and will consider implementing in your organization. There are some additional methods you can use to defend your system. Set all your browsers to block active code. Set all user accounts so they cannot install software, change browser security settings, and segregate your subnetworks. Place a firewall that's tightly secured with its own virus scanning software between the subnet and the rest of the network. These are things that should be over and above the normal security precautions that are taken by the organization. Now, the first one where you set all browsers to block active code, just be aware also that this may render some websites unviewable. For executing any active code. So what to do if your system is infected by a virus? First, stop the spread of the virus. So if the infection is on a segment of a WAN, then you immediately disconnect from that WAN connection. If the infection is on a subnetwork, immediately disconnect from that subnetwork. This is one of the reasons why you would subnet and segregate your networks. If there are servers with sensitive data that are connected to infected machines, you want to disconnect from those servers, because that's going to prevent the loss of the data, sensitive data. If you have backup devices connected to infected machines, disconnect those as well. That way you prevent your backup from becoming infected as well. So after you stop the spread of the virus, you want to remove the virus. You can do this by running an antivirus program, or you should be able to find some kind of virus removal instructions on the internet. And then find out how the infection started. So for this, you would need to talk to the user of the affected machine and see if anyone opened any email attachments, downloaded anything, clicked on a link, installed any type of software. This is the things that you want to check first. You want to read online documentation for that specific virus that you were infected with. It will tell you the normal methods of infection. And so if you cannot find those issues or the way the virus was introduced to your network through those, you want to check the activity logs that the machine might have. Check those and see the activity that was ran on the machine. All right, so in Chapter 9, we looked at viruses. These virus attacks and hoaxes are usually the greatest threats to a computer network. The sophistication of the viruses and worms are increasing, so it is necessary to understand how viruses work to prevent your infection. You also need to know how viruses spread, as we have talked about in this chapter as well. We've looked at some of the different antivirus programs. You want to make sure that you understand how each one of these work and that you're familiar enough to choose the right one for your organization, whether that is either in the paid commercial versions or a free version. Also, establish written policies and procedures. It's very important that you have written policies and procedures, defined, written, and also that your users are trained on these policies and the procedures that they should follow. Your users should know not to click on links in email, not to download files in emails. That is something that should be written in the policy and the users trained on. Also, remember the principle of least privilege. If a user does not need permission to install software, you need to make sure that you block that installation of software. Secure your browsers, and then also make sure that you segregate your networks. You separate subnetworks to where you can easily isolate an attack in one subnetwork. And keep in mind, as we talked about the policy procedures, we will be covering this more in Chapter 11.